Today we'll look at the letter D, which is probably the most difficult letter to do in Copperplate script. Principally because the line of universal beauty, and I'll do it a little bit larger here, and then a very thin bowl, and then a very narrow right bowl. Notice all of these are at the axis of the script, which is 55 degrees. We have an oval here, and its axis is 55 degrees. We have another oval here, and its axis is also 55 degrees. We have another oval there, and its axis is also 55 degrees. But then we have a much greater oval that encompasses the entire letter, and its axis is also 55 degrees. Now, some people do the D, with a slightly bigger right bowl. But like the P, I was told, be conscious of where these two are, because if you do this, they look like ram's horns. So I tend to do the D this way. Historically, this is how it was done anyway. So sorry for waffling on. So let's continue with the D itself. So the letter D, in some of its variations, as with all the other letters, you just need to figure out which part of the letter are you going to vary first. So what we're going to do is we'll do the line of universal beauty, and we'll vary the finial on the exit, on the last part of the D, on the end of the D. So we'll line of universal beauty. So you can do dollop serif, sorry about that, and then you can come back on yourself. Then you can do, using the dollop serif, you can produce a spiral. Notice the weight on the inside of the spiral. This is clearly not nearly as heavy as that is, because these are unnecessary strokes. They're just there for decoration. Then we have an extension of this left side. Notice I'm giving myself some space to play with. And that can connect to the rest of the word. And then we have extending this itself by adding some loops, or making the loops a little bit more generous. Then we can look at changing this, the direction that this leaves the stroke at. So we can have I have this in both the A, the B, and the C. Then we can change the line of universal beauty lead-in stroke. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next, we change the direction the line of universal beauty is tackled from. Sorry, there's just a loose hair sitting around. So we'll start at sort of halfway down. Notice the balance. So this is almost halfway through this line. So technically we have 1, 2, 3, we have 4 little quarters. If we go into fifths, then this is 2/5. Technical analysis of the letters, which we'll look at some other time. Then we can add a really beautiful loop on the line of universal beauty. And it's all about dividing up the space when it comes to flourishing. And then there's a really lovely, I'll do these slightly smaller because they're quite difficult to control. Next we have, let's start with a ball serve, fairly high up, but cross the D fairly low down. We can also drop the line of universal beauty so it is inside the bowl of the D, which means you need to be really careful not to make that lead-in stroke too long. Then, by not making the stroke long, you could include it in the D and loop right through it. Again, we can take a lead-in stroke to the line of universal beauty, include it inside of the shape, and very carefully connect that so it looks like it's all one stroke. Historically, we have letters that look like this, where we have that lead-in stroke. We have that lead-in stroke, a straight stroke, very Spencerian-like, an I, and a long D. So let's write and with eel next to it, you get deal. So obviously the following letters do actually help you to figure out what the word is. This again can be changed by adding and then we change the letter itself into, let's make the letter into a single stroke letter. So we have 1, 2, 3. So you have a ligature to connect the lowercase, or you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, there's also a version of this that you see with the letter P. All of these are historical letters. And then we have something very similar to this P, where if you didn't know that this was an 18th century variation, you would think it was based on a Spencerian letter form. And then we have this form of it, which goes underneath the letter. And then we have the joy of a reversed letter. Other letters that are slightly more complicated are and then we have the beautiful double letters. Sorry about that. When you're making the double letters, always leave enough space Now I've also left enough space to add a curl in the line of universal beauty. A little bit of weight here, and a little bit of weight there, and a little bit of weight under there. Some of the other letters we have are, and I'll do this slightly smaller because it's quite difficult to control. Now, I don't know if you noticed, I'm holding the pen this way. As I come up and over, I've rolled it a little bit around so that that weight is really in the right place. And in the 18th century, you'd find this generally used with the word doctor. Then we have another D, which is a slightly sort of Gothicized letter. And of course, we have a really decorative D, which I think I'll do on the end because I might need a little bit of space. So when I do this kind of D, I generally do it at the top or on its own so that we can just fit it in. So I would go 1, notice how much space I'm leaving. Then I would go, and then. So what I'm doing is I'm doing some very simple acanthus leaf. Now you can go in there and fiddle with that, or you can go in and just hatch and put in little dots. Don't know how many of you studied heraldry, but we don't know. I'm not going to do that. Sorry. Let me just finish this, and then you go 1, 2, 3. And then again, you can go inside here and hatch these. Oh, that'll be tiring. And there is your page.